Hey folks, welcome to the Knock and Talk Show. I, of course, am your host, Patrick Faulkner, and this is episode number 17. Today's guest is Travis Johnson, who is a current United States Navy officer. Now, we're going to be discussing why Goose shouldn't have died, how Travis #beat the Navy, and all roads lead back to the Bourbon Trail. So join us as we discuss those topics and more right after this.
The Knock&Talk Show is a certified veteran-hosted podcast. Show your support. Tune in, share, and subscribe.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Knock and Talk Show. This is episode number 17, and I, of course, am your host, Patrick Faulkner. Today's guest is none other than Travis Johnson, current United States Navy officer and small business owner, entrepreneur extraordinaire. So, Travis, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks, Patrick. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's been I wouldn't say a long time coming, but I've been interested in getting you on the show, and I appreciate you reaching out earlier this week to be on the show this week. That was great. I didn't really have to do anything to get you on the show.
I've heard it in the streets, and I've seen it written on bathroom walls that I'm easy. So I guess it's true.
Okay, well, cheap and easy, or just easy?
Oh, I'm definitely not cheap.
Travis, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, like at your elevator speech, and a little bit about what you're doing, and we'll go into more of that later on in the show.
Sure thing, Patrick. I am Travis Dwayne Johnson. I don't go by The Rock because I would hate for people to get us confused, because obviously we are the exact same in appearance.
So much alike.
Someone's like, why don't you go by The Rock? And I'm like, I go by Taco because it's more body appropriate than The Rock. I definitely don't meet up to those kind of standards. But currently still serving. This is January 7th, 22. I'm still serving as an active duty naval officer. You can't tell by my facial hair that I'm still in, but I don't have to retire until March 1st. I did 11 years enlisted, 10-ish years commissioned, and that's the military stuff. I know, it's just like the tip of the iceberg. Currently the host of, bam, look at this, advertising nonprofit architect podcast, helping you build a stronger nonprofit, interviewing all business leaders, nonprofits, leaders, consultants, all in an attempt to help you build a stronger nonprofit. It's my mission to help the helpers do it better.
Awesome. Help the helpers. That's pretty good. So just the tip of the iceberg. So what you're saying is there's a much larger iceberg floating under the water that is there to sink the Titanic.
It's huge. It's huge. You know that there is a leadership discussion around how would you save everyone on the Titanic. Have you heard this?
No, I have not.
I'll give you some time to think about it. I don't want your immediate reaction, but just kind of think about it as I'm droning on about whatever nonsense I'm talking about. Like, how would you actually go about saving everyone on the Titanic? There's a few different methods that I know of, but maybe you'll come up with something on your own.
I'm doing it.
We've lost him, folks. He's gone. He's in the Titanic. Leo's
there.
Yeah.
So continue with your drabble there, and I'll
drabble.
Yeah.
So people are always like, well, why nonprofit podcasting? Like, why is that the thing? And I was like, well, it has to do with my childhood. I was like, oh, here we go, childhood stuff. So before turning 17 and graduating high school, it was 36 moves, 12 schools, 6 states, 5 foster homes, and both my mom and sister tried to kill me. Write those down because there's going to be a test later. We got to know all those stats. Yeah. But there's always a but. there was always some group, some nonprofit, some organization willing to help keep us sheltered, clothed, and fed. And now that I'm not in that place of scarcity or survival mode, it's my mission to help the helpers.
That's awesome. How did you get to the Navy after all that childhood trauma? What led to
Yeah,
the Navy?
yeah. Well, when you are in trailer parks and foster homes, there's not a lot of what you call, street cred or a good family name or money or good grades or any of that stuff. And, I graduated in 99. For those of you listening, that's the last millennium, graduated last millennium. And trying to figure out, what to do with my life. At the time I graduated high school, man, I haven't said this stuff in like forever. I was like a shift supervisor at Burger King that opened up every day, and I drove across town. I know you're in Georgia. I'm from Minnesota originally, and up north, like bowling alleys are a destination. Like you go there, they've got like the best food in town. So I worked the lunch counter at the bowling alley, and I worked at Walmart unloading truck from 5 p.m. to 2 in the morning. Did that 5 days a week. Travis can no longer do that kind of behavior because like I get sleepy. Like I want to go to bed. I don't want to, do all that work. But, my dad had a good conversation with me. He's like, why don't you get rid of all those sweet crappy jobs and get one good job? And I was like, no, there's an idea. He had come to me. He was a boiler tech in the Navy and went on to be a boiler inspector for the state of Minnesota and eventually the chief boiler inspector. But he was trying to convince me that I should get rid of my crappy jobs, which he was right, to go work at the local community college that had a boiler system that he had the in at. I just had to show up and not be a dumb 18-year-old, and I could have walked right into it. And it was paying $18 an hour, which, I mean, in the 90s, like $18 an hour isn't nothing. It's still not nothing.
I mean, I was working at Blockbuster making $4.25 an hour. So,
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I wasn't making more than, I don't think, $8 an hour at the time, $7 or $8 an hour. So it was like a significant pay increase. But I was like, I just don't feel like that has a future. Now, in his mind, like I could become an inspector like him and do all these things, get all these qualifications, and he would have been wrong. But I didn't see what he saw. And I asked him about the military, and I knew right away that like the Army and Marine Corps mentality and all, like, just wasn't for me. I was like, you want me to carry all my stuff everywhere and get shot at? Like, I'm not interested. Like, you get to go shoot people. It's like, they shoot back. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get shot at. I was like, not again. You know what I mean? So I immediately went and talked to the Air Force, and they found out that I had a criminal record. They said, what's the deal? And I was like, and they were like, is it more than like a parking ticket? I was like, yeah. And they're like, no. So then I go talk to the Navy, and they asked me about my criminal record, and I kind of just, little shell game action, just kind of don't really answer the question. And, asked my dad what kind of area I should get into. He's like, I don't know what you should do, but he's like, I know they treat those aviation boys pretty well. So I talked to him about aviation, took the ASVAB, all that stuff. And they were trying to talk me into nuke. And I was like, I don't want it. And they're like, oh, you should do the interview anyway. I was like, I know about the process. I'm just going to tank the interview. And they're like, fine, we'll talk to you about aviation stuff. And I was like, okay, so we'll talk about some aviation stuff. And he went through like all the jobs. And I was like, I don't really like any of them. I was like, what else you got? He's like, well, that was it. Those were the jobs. And I was like, what do you do? He's like, oh, I'm an ejection seat guy. It's like, all right, sign me up for that. I'll go do the injection seat stuff. Okay. And
egress.
Got through the whole process and got down to the last day, and they're going through, recruiters doing his diligence and making sure that all the, the T's are crossed and the lowercase J's are dotted and all that stuff. And he's like, oh, we didn't answer this part about criminal record. I was like, oh, you see, I have one of those. And they were like, son of, I can't believe. And because I was so well qualified and all of the thing, met all the criteria, and they'd done all the work and stuff, I had to eventually call the admiral of the recruiting command, which is a 1-star admiral, to convince him to get a waiver that I wasn't some kind of delinquent, that I was just, a one-off thing. And it's no kidding, the only thing on my record. It's like the one thing. And was able to convince him, was able to talk my way into the military, and then was off into the wild, not blue yonder because it's Navy, but yeah, that's how I got in.
Wow. What was that conversation like with the admiral?
Admirals are just people like you and me. They just put their pants on 2 legs at a time, just like you and I do.
2 legs at a time. All right. So, I mean, did it take a lot of convincing, or
It was like
just
a 15-minute conversation. I can pretty much convince just about anyone of anything. If
okay.
there's no money involved, absolutely. If there's money involved, sometimes it's a little bit tougher, but
Money coming to you?
yeah, money coming to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I have some of your money.
You do have some of my money.
I do have some of your money.
And we'll talk about that. Money well spent, I will say, up front, and you'll learn more about that money later on. So interesting, you have experience both in the enlisted world as well as in the commission world.
Mhm.
How did life change for you 10 years down the road when you
Yeah.
went into the commission side of things?
Dramatically. So joined the Navy, went out to Lemoore, California. If you ever get a chance to go there, just go ahead and pass on that. Lemoore is
Got
just terrible. But I working on ejection seats on F-18s, got to mount a movie camera and an F-18 for behind enemy lines that they filmed with Owen Wilson, Gene Hackman, which was pretty
One
cool.
of my favorite movies.
Yeah. And then when I went to SEER school, like 12 years later, like it was the exact experience as described when Owen Wilson's like running away and doing all the things that he does. He followed the script of how to do SEER school. So anyone listening to this that has to go do SEER school and you haven't gone yet, watch the movie and like they show you what to do. So that's pretty cool.
Just no names over the net.
Yeah, no names over the net.
No names
but that ejection sequence was like killer, like great sequence.
Yeah.
Really
Obviously, they learned more than what Goose did, because every time Goose pulls in, he
here
dies
we
every
go.
time. Every
Here
time
we
he
go.
dies. You would
He
think
dies
he
every
would
time.
learn. You would think he would duck, chin in, something.
Well, it's crazy because like how an ejection seat works and how the canopy is blown off and all those things. Like what happened to Goose is like impossible. That's just not how it works. Either
Right.
the canopy goes or it doesn't go.
Right.
But when the canopy is blown and it's hits the wind stream and is ripped back, like there's nothing in the way, or it doesn't blow at all, and then the seats have risers in them that lets you break through the formed. It's not glass. I haven't done it for a long time. Whatever the material is, stretched
Glass.
acrylic or something.
Glass.
Sure. Yeah, it's not glass, but yeah.
The canopy.
Like you shoot right through the glass and it's no big deal. So like when that happens in the movie and everyone that's an ejection seat guy is like, oh, it's such garbage. Like Goose didn't have to die. Your movie nonsense ruined Goose. And it's crazy because I got commissioned and I am Goose. I'm a naval flight officer, not a pilot. So I am the backseater guy. So I went from working on ejection seats to becoming Goose along with the mustache, apparently. I could even sing in a San Diego bar if you like.
Can you?
No, yeah, well, I can.
You can.
I'm not going to, but I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
No, I was actually in a cappella choir in high school and we competed in like Denver and Disney World and all over the place.
Wow.
It wasn't as fun as like the movies, like Pitch Perfect. Oh, my dream.
Your dream. Well, let me ask you this. During one of your pre-flight inspections, did you climb into the back seat and make sure that the seat was set right and the pin was in the right place and that the cannon plugs were all attached properly? Yeah, I was an avionics guy. I know about cannon plugs.
Yeah.
So
I have done that. I have done those things. I have removed an ejection seat. I have tore it apart. I've tested all the tolerance.
As an officer.
No, not as an officer.
That's what I was asking. After you went into the commission corps, did you actually?
Oh, after being commissioned? So you go through flight school, right?
Yeah.
There's just like a point where you diverge to more either mission-oriented stuff as a naval flight officer or more pilot-specific training as a pilot. So like on an F-14, I would have sat in the back seat.
Mm-hmm.
As on the plane I was on, the E-6B Mercury, not the E-6B, not the EA-6B Proud, but the E-6B Mercury. Like I sit 75 feet behind the flight deck, behind the flight engineers and the pilots, like way in the back, feet up in the back, wheels up, heels up.
There you go.
Anyone that knows me and is listening to this are like, oh, you're pulling a Goose. Like that's not what happens. Like, of course not. But Yeah, but I mean, you go through when you go through training and stuff, like you go through the ejection seat trainer, and I was like, I used to work on these. Like we went to my old schoolhouse. I was commissioned, and actually one of the guys that worked for me when I was listed was now there as an instructor, and I got to re-enlist him when I was an ensign. For
Oh,
you
wow, that's pretty cool.
military types, that's like second lieutenant for other services, you know. But you fly in the T6, and the T6 is an ejection seat aircraft, so got to put on the G suit and the harness and all that, and the helmet and all that stuff, and like strap in and go fly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So, fast forward a little bit. How did a Navy guy get into OKC?
So this is the only location where these jets fly out of. So I was in Lemoore, an F-18 guy, and I hadn't been to like the specific school. They call it a C school where you go like learn like F-18 specific stuff. I didn't go to that school, and I had gotten married to a gal, Megan, that I was dating immediately after high school, and she got pregnant. You know, that happens occasionally.
It does happen.
It does happen occasionally. Stuff like that happens. And
Yes.
you know, I was searching for orders and different things. And I talked to my dad. You notice that a lot. I talk to my dad, and then I tend to take his advice, which makes me, I guess, the good kid. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was like, "What do you think?" He's like, "Well," he's like, if you can be in the military and be there for your kid's birth, that's kind of a big deal because that doesn't happen all the time." And I was like, "Okay, that's a pretty good criteria." And at the time, I was looking at the E6 at a Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma City, which is where I am currently. You know how the story ends, right? And I was talking to P3s in Hawaii, and I called up the P3 squadron immediately because Hawaii sounded much better than Oklahoma. And I called out there, I was like, "Hey, where are you guys going to be?" Like early February. They're like, "We're going to be in Diego Garcia." And I was like, looks like I'm going to Oklahoma. And, you know, got to Oklahoma. I was still on E3. I hadn't been out there long enough to be eligible for promotion yet. I got here, and I actually took the advancement exam at the Reserve Center in Fargo, North Dakota, because I was on leave. And you're dumb and young enlisted, like you don't know anything. Like, so I just happened to talk to the right person in Lemoore that was like, I was like, "How do I do the test thingy? Like, I haven't done it yet." And they're like, "Well, yeah, we order it and this and that, and it's gonna be on this date." I was like, "I'm not gonna be here. Like, I'm gonna be on leave between commands." He's like, "Well, where are you gonna be?" Like, we're from like West Central Minnesota, like 2.5 hours north of Minneapolis. Is there like any kind of command up there? I was like, I mean, like my dad's in the reserves up there. Like, there's a reserve center in Fargo. They mailed the test to the reserve center in Fargo,
Wow.
which was really cool, right? Because I didn't
Yeah.
expect that. I didn't know that was gonna happen. And then like some other guys were like telling me about it. I was like, "Well, you're there in a big room with everybody, and they have all these rules and the proctors and all these things." And I'm like, "Okay." And I get there, and like I'm the only dude, and there's like some reserve LT who's like completely annoyed that he's got to be there. And because we don't test the same month that the reservist tests. Right.
Okay.
So there's nobody else there. It's like me in an office by myself taking this exam. But I get down to Oklahoma City, and I'm going through the course, and we go do like through the squadron. And one of the senior chiefs there is like, "Hey, congratulations." I was like, "Thanks. You know, excited to be in Oklahoma." He's like, "Your name's on the list." I was like, "What list? Like your shit list? Like what list?" He's like, "On this list," and he points to it. I've never seen it before. Like I have no idea what's happening. And I was like, "Okay, my name's on a paper." And he's looking at me like I'm not very intelligent, which we know is not true because they offered me nuke. I simply have no clue what he's talking about.
Right.
He was like, "This is the promotion list. You got promoted to 3rd class." I was like, "That's really cool." Like, but I had no idea because like it was my first time taking the test. I was on leave in between commands. You know, got there, like was just trying to learn the new airplane, and then like results came out, and I was like, you know, but like I didn't know any of this stuff yet, and I got promoted, and that was exciting. And then I worked at the squadron there in Oklahoma City VQ4 Shadows for 5 years. Made 2nd class or E5 for United Navy types. You know, took over a shift, got all my qualifications, and then you know, like time for orders again. And of course, I'm looking back at Hawaii. I'm thinking like, you know, I could go like drive the admiral's car out there, be in the
Yeah,
motor
sure.
pool, hang out. I had a guy that was out there. He was wanting to come back to Oklahoma City, had the qualifications. I was going to go out there. It was going to be perfect, except for he's Hawaiian and he's just like on island time and just never did his part, right? And my number two, out of convenience, because I moved 36 times growing up, like I didn't want to move. So I was like, well, I could go take orders to instruct like across the parking lot. That was kind of like my backup. I had like my vision of not doing anything, like, oh, I'm just going to go chill in Hawaii. And then the vision of doing something that's good for my career. And they're like, well, you're going to go across and you're going to be an instructor. And I was like, oh, okay, like, made first class over there. So, between that command 4, VQ4, and then teaching, that's 8 years of my career. And I got over there, I made first class, made E6, somehow convinced people that I was worth doing stuff like my 9-year mark. Like in my job field promotion rate was really low. So the average time people took to make first class was like 11 years. And I went from E1 to E6 in 7 years. So I was ahead of the curve by like 4 years.
Yeah.
And then I was looking at like promotion opportunities down the road, and the average for making chief as my job field as AME was like 17 years on average. I was like, 17 years on average. Like that doesn't sound good at all. Like I don't want to do that. So I was looking around to see like kind of what the options were, because it was coming up on my 10-year point. So I was like at the 9 years, I was like, well, it's kind of either like, you stay or, you get out and you're not really sure what it is that you want to do. And I looked back at like Minnesota, where we're from, looking for job opportunities, stuff like, I don't know what I want to do. And like, there's nothing. And then I look at, I've got now 2 kids, I've got my daughter and my son, and like, I still need to make money, right? Like money's still a thing. They still want to eat every day. I hear it's a thing. And, they did a briefing about this officer program, the Seaman to Admiral program. I'm like, Seaman to Admiral program. Like I thought about it when I was fresh in the Navy. It's like, oh, that sounds really cool. Of course I like more money. Yes. And then I was looking at it. Yeah. Money. You want me to give me more money? Yes, I would love more money. Please give me more money. And I was looking at it and I was like, this is a thing. This is like a thing I could do. Like at that point, I was like, this is a thing, started asking some of the older FE, the flight engineers. I was like, did you guys ever want to do this? Like, is this something you wanted to do? And they're like, well, yeah, but at the time I also wanted to fly, and there wasn't like dedicated jobs for just flying for enlisted at the time. Now there are, but back then there were not. So you had to kind of like pick. So these guys picked flying duty. And then by the time they got around to like, I want to try that out, like they were too old. Like they aged out of the program. They aged out of their eligibility. And then I asked my dad, because that's what you do when you don't know things. You ask your dad. And I was like, did you ever want to do this? And he was like, I did. He was a boiler tick back in the 70s, got out for 8 years, then got back in the reserves. Like he missed all the regging years where everyone got promoted. You get a promotion. Like all his friends were Master Chief. And he was like, hey, my first class, because he missed all the huge promoting time. And like people had told him like, yeah, you would make a good officer for whatever reason. And he's like, I want to do it, but I want to make chief first. I want to make that E7, make that chief in the Navy, which is a big deal. And every year he felt like he was going to make it. And then every year he didn't. And he just had like, that was his check to then go apply for officer. He's like, I ended up never applying. 20 plus years in the Navy, retired as an E6, never made chief for whatever reason, but also never applied to that stuff. And he's like, look, if this is something you desire to do, if you feel like this is right for you and your family and your career, he's like, then go for it and don't let anything stop you. And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm determined. I'm going to do this. I'm going to apply to the Seaman to Admiral program, State 21 program. I'm going to apply for LDO, limited duty officer, degree not required. And then if those don't work, like I'm going to finish my degree and do officer candidate school or like officer training school in another service. So I'm like, I'm doing it. And lo and behold, the first application I submitted, they said yes. And I was just as shocked as everybody else. They're like, your name's on the list. I was like, what list?
What list?
Like, what list? Like, what are you talking about? Like the Master Chief, the E9 is coming into the gym to like, here's the phone. This is before everyone had like a cell phone like attached to him. And I was like, why is the Master Chief delivering me a handset phone? It's like 2009, I think. Fall of 2009. And I was like, hello? He's like, is that how you answer a phone? I was like, I don't know. I got handed a random phone. And it was the officer in charge of the OIC. And he's like, congratulations, you've been selected. And I was like, you're messing with me, right? He's like, no, like, I like, has a Master Chief ever delivered you a phone? It's like, no, that's true. Like, so I got selected and got sent off to go to college full time, and I was in Oklahoma. So I went to University of Oklahoma because they have naval ROTC, and went through and got commissioned. Whole different ball game on the commission side. I had no idea what to expect. I had almost no officer interaction my whole career up until that point, until working with the OIC to get commissioned. Like, just hadn't had any.
Right.
Yeah, it's very strange. All the surface Navy guys, all the guys on the ships, they're like the officers run our lives. In aviation, like, they go fly and you're fixing the plane. Like, you don't really,
Right.
you don't even interact. Like, it's whatever. Yeah, very different.
Yeah. So I was avionics in the Air Force, and very like you, very limited interaction with even our maintenance officer. So I always worked the third shift or mid shift, what we called it. She was never around. He was never around. They were never around. And the only time you talk to pilots is when they broke the plane. They came down to tell you about it.
Which is every day.
Which is every day.
Yeah. Every day.
Yeah. So my favorite write-up, because again, I was avionics, so part of what I did was the radios. This pilot wrote up that the UHF did not work in the off position.
Yep. I got the same one for air conditioning.
Did it not work in the?
They thought it was on full force, and like, there's no force. And I was still in no
force.
I thought it was on full force. Like, so, like, one of the other guys like messed with him, right, and told him like, oh yeah, that should totally. So he goes down to maintenance to be like, yeah, senior chief, like, it's got to be a thing. We got to write it up. And they have like we call it the bitch box. It's like the speaker, like, hey, boop, Amy's like. I was like, yeah. He's like, hey, is this Johnson? I was like, yeah. He's like, where's Russell at? And at the time, I'm still like an E2 or E3, but I knew what I was talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like, come down here. We've got something for you. And I'm like getting called into the office. You're like, what's going on? Like, I go in there, and like, he stops me like right before we walk in. He's like, this guy is trying to say that air conditioning doesn't work in the OFF position, and he's kind of being a tool. Can you like giving him an example and kind of make him feel dumb? Because we were working at a training command. So when you go, like, for those of you who don't like know the process, like, you get selected for college, you get commissioned, they send you to flight school in Pensacola for the Navy, and we've got Marines, and there's actually some other services there. But you go through this thing called aviation pre-flight indoctrination, which is all the school, right? Then you go through, could be, if you don't already have a pilot's license, you go through an introductory flight screening to make sure you can like know the rules. And then you go through a primary school, and you go through an intermediate, and you go through an advanced. And then from there, like, guys are going to be flying jets, which is like the highest grades, the most folk, like all that stuff. Like, they go to an advanced school and they fly jets, and like all these different, stepping stones. You're not just hopping into an F-18, right? Well, the last stop is VFA 125 as the F-18. It was a replacement air group at the time. Now it's Fleet Replacement Squadron, because they don't like saying RAG, whatever. Fleet Replacement Squadron. So that's like their final stop before they go on to their big squadron, right? So this is an NLT that's probably like 2 years in the Navy. They're 24. They've done college. They went to flight school, and now they're here in their last stop before their squadron. So young guys, and I was like, is he messing with you? He's like, this guy is serious as all get out. So I go in there and I say, hey, I'm Aaron Johnson, I work on this equipment. What seems to be a problem? He's like, well, it's strange because the ECS doesn't work in the on full force position. I was like, on full force position? He's like, yeah, the switch, it says OFF. So I went over to the light switch, and I was like, on full force. I'm shutting the lights off on like 50 people. On full force. On full force. And one of the chiefs in the back is like, damn it, Travis. Like, sir, it's a fucking off switch. Thank you for the demonstration. And everyone's busting up. And this guy is standing there with all these people being like, I can't believe they got me. And of course, his buddy is behind him like the whole time, knows the whole time, just watching, he's bright red, like trying not to laugh.
That's so
and
awesome.
The guy turns around with like this death look, like and dude's like, ah!
That is awesome.
Great fun to be had
Yes,
occasionally. I
yes.
mean, it's all serious in the military. We only do serious stuff.
Only serious stuff.
Only serious stuff.
Yeah. So I had an opportunity to talk to several other veterans, and some of them have talked about stories of team building. Now, in the old days, it would be considered hazing, but these days, politically correctness and all that, some team building exercises. One of them was an atomic sit-up that I had not heard of before. That interview with Griff of Combat Flip Flops, so free plug Griff. Any of those shenanigans that you can remember, whether it was in the enlisted corps or in the commissioned side of things, similar to that? Like, did you get anybody like the on?
There wasn't anything like serious. Like when I was very fresh in, there was still a lot of hazing and a lot of different things. There's a tradition in the Navy of tacking on a crow, your promotion on your left shoulder, your eagle mounted over chevrons, or then the arch for the chief. But when you make third class, you make E4 in the Navy. They used to sew them on, right? You tack them on, and everyone would go through and get a turn, and that turned into like everyone in line is just gonna punch you in the arm.
Yep.
Welcome to the club, right? And it got pretty serious. I wasn't, because you're not yet at that rank, so like I couldn't participate, which I very much appreciate, right? But like it ended up that it got a little out of hand, and someone got like their arm put over a drop tank, and like someone dropped an elbow on the arm and broke dude's arm in a couple of places, which is completely uncalled for and no longer helpful, right? It's like, welcome to the club, but we're gonna jump you in. I was like, what is this, a gang? And then no kidding, like shortly after that, like the CNO and the Master Chief Pastor of the Navy, like they all came out with these anti-hazing rules and stuff. Some things like carried on. Things when you used to get your air crew, it would fill up, you take off one of your aircrew boots, they would fill it full of beer, and they put your wings at the bottom, and you'd have to drink your wings out. I never saw this firsthand, and by the time that I got to aviation status, that was no longer a thing either. But, these things existed, and for someone like myself that had a traumatic childhood, was always, never stable, and like some of this stuff terrified me. Like I was like, I'm not interested in any of these things. And for the people that have never really been traumatized or victimized, or like, oh, what are you talking about? It's nothing. I'm glad that you feel that way. I really am. But for some of us, like it's horrendous. You immediately go flashbacks, you immediately back into your trauma. Doesn't matter how old you are, how big you are, how scary you are, how tough you are, like inside, you're right back in that moment. And for anyone that's ever had traumatic experience, PTS, TBI, or something else that I just haven't mentioned, like it's the worst ever, because your subconscious doesn't differentiate between a memory and a feeling. It doesn't differentiate between that and reality. Like if you're feeling it, if you're experiencing it, if you're remembering it, you're actually feeling it. You're in that moment, your psyche, all that stuff is back in that place. So very happy to never be actually hazed or witness legitimate hazing in the Navy. But I know not everyone can say that.
No. Like when we put on new stripes, got promoted up, we'd have to walk the gauntlet. So your arms down by your side, you take a step forward, and there's a guy on each side, and they pound it in. So if you were in a bigger squadron, that really sucked.
Yeah, we had 65 airplanes and something like 800 people in that squadron, my first squadron, like enormous.
Yeah, thankfully I was always on the night shift, and there was only like 20 people total working. So there was, it wasn't as bad as the guys that work day watch. Now, one that I was glad I didn't have to partake in is there was a tradition on your last day. They would chase you down at some point in time during the day, duct tape your hands, and then escort you over to the squadron flagpole, hoist you up, duct tape you to the pole, and then hose you down with water, sometimes if they really didn't like you, you got stripped down to your skivvies and then hosed down with water. Again, I was on night watch, and there were too many broken planes for people to break away to go do that. So I lucked out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the different branches, what are your thoughts on the sibling rivalry between everybody?
Oh, it's hilarious, and vast majority of it is good fun. I know usually some of the young bucks out in a bar, they end up getting in scuffles and whatnot, but I think most of it's hilarious. My favorite stuff was going through A school, and because I had a father in the Navy, but what's funny is that's not why I moved around. Very interesting there, but like I knew the Marines that were down there doing through the aviation stuff, they were going to spend just as much, if not more time on the ship during their time in the military. And they were talking about, oh yeah, this and that, and you've got your name on your back of your pants and all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, I was like, how do you think you get to where you're going? You think you take airplanes? Marine is my ass rides in Navy equipment. You better believe when there was an Uber back then, we're your taxi drivers, and you're going to be at sea just as much as we are. And they were like, oh, it's not true. Say it isn't so, you know, like the reason, I mean, this is funny on so many reasons, because I only have 21 days of sea time in the Navy for 21 years. I got average of 1 day per year. I didn't want to overdo it. I've only got, you know, we got on, we're in VFA 125, and we went out to the boat for their carrier quals, right? So I've got time on the Stennis, time on the Lincoln, time on the Connie, but only like 5 or 6 days at a shot, right? So when I got on the E6B, it's 150 feet long and wide. It's too big for the boat. There's no tail hook. So getting on an airplane that's too big for the ship, huge win.
Nice.
Huge win. I was going to do it either way. If I want P3s or the E6, like I was going to get an airplane that's too big for the boat, because like, yeah, it made sense to me. Yeah.
How does the Navy feel about Coasties?
I personally think they're great. I didn't have any experiences with them until I went out to the Kingdom of Bahrain. I got stationed out at 5th Fleet headquarters out in Bahrain, and one of my good friends is in the Coast Guard. Because when you do things in the Coast Guard, first and foremost, like they are always working, whether they're doing security, interdiction, enforcing international law, doing safety of life at sea, doing, you know, what do you call it, like rescue swimming and jumping out and like jumping in the water when it's, you know, 40-foot swells saving lives. Like they're really doing the work. And what you don't realize is like the Coast Guard has been involved in every major conflict all around the planet. Like there's 12, I don't know if they're ships or boats, but Coast Guard vessels stationed in Bahrain, and they do security. They go around and they interdict drugs and people that are smuggling and people that are doing all sorts of bad stuff. And like, they really do some legit things. You can be like an executive officer for a command as an enlisted person. And all the pilots that are in the Coast Guard, every officer goes through and has to be as command of a vessel as at you know, O2 and O3 before they're eligible to like become a Coast Guard pilot. Wow. So like the stuff that they do and the things that they accomplish. Now, I didn't know any of this until I got out there at like my 19-year mark. You know, you just hadn't experienced. I've been in the middle of the country for most of my career because I went to flight school and I got stationed back in Oklahoma and did another tour instructing before I went to Bahrain and then came back. So like other than Lemoore, I did like a year in flight school and a year in Bahrain. Otherwise than that, I've been in Oklahoma, which is nuts, right?
Yeah, it is. I was a one-term enlisted guy, so I did 4 years. I was stationed at Moody Air Force Base, and I did a short TDY, I guess a 90-day TDY to Bahrain back at the end of the 90s. We didn't get to see much outside of Tent City.
No, you didn't. No. You didn't. See, now, like, depending on if you are like at like the 5th Fleet base or if you're at Issa Air Base, because Issa Air Base is the south end of the island and you're in Tent City and in shanties. If you're stationed at like headquarters or one of the task forces, like I lived in on the 11th floor of an apartment in this massive building. The floors were all marble and it's overlooking the ocean. And there's still people in Tent City and Isa. So
Yeah.
I chose correctly.
Yes,
I
you did.
got I got a
Yes,
friend
you
that says that like I beat the Navy. Like every story I tell, like they're like, you beat the Navy. Like you
Nice.
did.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Like
I
right
would,
now, I'm on Skill Bridge. Have you heard of this yet? Skill Bridge?
no.
Skill Bridge, they realized how terrible they were at transitioning people back to civilian life. And Skill Bridge is a program that allow you to do between 90 and 180 days as an intern with an industry partner out in the real world. So I'm currently on Skill Bridge, and I've been so for 2 months, working remotely. Thank you, COVID. And I'm helping an organization called Skill Mill with their podcast.
Nice.
That's my military duty. I'm still getting my full-time, my O3E over 20 pay, which explains this facial hair because I don't retire until March 1st. So I'm still in technically for another 80 math, 50-ish days, whatever the math is on that.
80 to 50 days, somewhere in there.
Oh, it's like a 90 and an 80. I was like, no, it's less than 2 months. So it's got to be under 60-ish days.
Yeah,
Whatever the math is.
That's some quick math.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I understand that you're a bourbon guy.
Oh, I am a bourbon guy. You know, all that crap that happened in my childhood, like I never drank or did drugs. I don't know how I avoided it or whatever, because so many people, so many young people, when they get into those experiences, they got to go, they have to have some kind of coping mechanism. And I don't know how I didn't turn to those things. I'm so glad that I didn't. But like the first thing I ever tried was bourbon. It was Jim Beam. It was awful. I didn't know it was awful because I didn't know any better. But then like I never really got into beer. I don't know why. People are like, oh, you don't drink beer? I was like, yeah, but I drink bourbon. So let's be honest here. It was actually I actually got to go on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. Have you heard of this?
Yes, and I want to do that. I just haven't been able to yet.
So my wife is so fantastic. It's like the end of 2018. It's gonna be about my birthday. She's like, you should like go on a road trip or something like with the guys before you're overseas for a year. And I was like, that's a great idea. I would love to do that. Thank you for suggesting that. And I talked to one of my buddies back up. I think he lived in Fargo because Fargo is right like within 40 minutes of where we grew up. And I was like, what do you think? He's like, yeah, we're doing it. He's like, I'm going to drive down. It's going to be great. He grabbed a buddy of his and they came down to Oklahoma City, which is like 12 and a half hours. And then like we went over to Memphis for a night. Okay. Had barbecue, went on Beale Street, had a great time. We did a new city and a new experience every day on this trip. So went to Memphis the first night, got our car broken into, got my backpack stolen. I had like school books for college. So I got my backpack, laptop, books stolen the first night. Great party. Nice. Yeah.
Welcome to Memphis.
Welcome to Memphis, suckers. First night. Other than that, I had a great experience. But the next day, like we had to like get the auto glass repaired, right? We had to like, it was raining, like we couldn't make it to Nashville. It was just pouring down rain. Like we went, there was a auto glass shop right across from the Memphis Tiger Stadium. So like me and a buddy went and like checked out the stadium because it's open. If it's not game day, you can just walk in or whatever. Got the glass fixed, drove to Nashville, and like in between. So you've got someone that drank heavily, someone that drank kind of, someone that was DDing for the day. So the guy that kind of drank, but not too bad, like they're trying to find an Airbnb and like where we're going to go hang out. Okay. And the guy that didn't drink, that was sober, like they're driving and like the other guys passed out like in between places. But we go find a place in Nashville because like the Bourbon Trail is just north of Nashville between like Lexington and Louisville, or as they like to say, Louisville with no consonants or syllables or anything. It's like they're drooling out of their mouth while they say it. Like you take a sip and like you go to talk and like all the fluid comes out.
Fresh
like,
after the dental.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. After you go to dental, your face is all numb. So we go there, we go to Nashville, have a great time. We go, Broadway is the street down there. And like, if you would have asked me before I went to Nashville, I've been all 50 states, every major city except for Philly, Pittsburgh, and Miami. I've been all over. And like, if you'd been like, hey, you want to go check out some live music? I'd been like, no. Like, I hate live music because they never like make the sound right for the thing. It's always like disgustingly loud just because they want to be loud. And usually the people performing are on some kind of substance and the quality just sucks. But in Nashville, everyone's trying to make it in the music biz.
Yeah.
So you've got all these bars that are like 3, 4, and 5 stories in Nashville, and every floor you go on, there's a different band playing a different type of music, and there's like a whole different vibe. So like you get in there and you get into it, and you're like, oh, okay, whatever. You just go up on one floor, and it's like a whole other scene. And some of them are connected on like the rooftop bars. So like you'll go like up one building, and then you'll go over and you'll just go down the next building. Like,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was so
Wow.
cool. Had a great time. And then we drove out to Lexington, which is not the greatest town. That's where like University of Kentucky is. And it just so happened that Duke was in town playing Kentucky, which is a huge basketball game. So we got to hang out and see that, which was great. Got up the next morning, went to Buffalo Trace and to Wild Turkey Distilleries. Buffalo Trace, if you don't know about Buffalo Trace, don't even call yourself a bourbon guy. It is absolutely flat on amazing between that. Angel's Envy, Pappy Van Winkle, Blanton's, all the different varieties of bourbon are just phenomenal. And you get to try them all. Right? It's great.
Yeah.
We did that like before lunch, and then we went over to, because, no plans, right? Then we went over to Wild Turkey, and it turns out that the tour guide there was a former Marine Corps drill sergeant. So the tour had like a little bit of extra flavor. It was a lot of fun. There's we were hoping this thing would be open. There's a huge train bridge behind the Wild Turkey Distillery. It's a place like where people go bungee jumping, and they do like base jumping off of this massive train bridge. You can look it up. It's really cool looking. I was like, we're like, dude, is anyone going like bungee jumping? And they were closed for the season. By the time we went, it was like November. So they weren't open, but had a lot of fun there. Went to Louisville that night. And Louisville is cool because they have a downtown area like Nashville and like Memphis did, but it's covered over the street. There's like a big, huge covering over a 2-block section. Oh, yeah. So cool. Hung out down there, met some people, and they found out that we were veterans and that we couldn't buy a drink the rest of the night. Anywhere we went, anything we did, these guys are veterans. Oh, everyone erupts, and then we can't pay for anything, which is a huge plus when you're traveling on a budget.
Yep. On a budget.
Yeah.
Yes.
On a budget. We get up the next morning. This is my birthday. This is November 8th. And we had Jim Beam on the list and Maker's Mark on the list. Jim Beam, I thought it would be cooler than it was, but it was still pretty cool. Like Devil's Cut was big at the time, and they have like little places you can go like tap and get like all these different, because like Jim Beam's a big brand. They've got all these different flavors. They've got Knob Creek. They got a bunch of stuff. And then we went to Maker's Mark, and Maker's Mark was probably like the most gorgeous facility. Like they had a really cool stuff, but they really like their swag. Like there was like a sweater in the gift shop. I was like, oh, that's a good looking sweater. It was like $280. I was like, whoa, slow down there, Maker's Mark. You're not that great. Like
a lot of bourbon you want me to give up.
Oh yeah. Definitely don't want to do that. And they're like, we're kind of in the middle of the country. Like, where do we want to go? We're like, because we can go back to Nashville, or we can go to St. Louis, Indianapolis. The whole goal is to get to Chicago. I got tickets Sunday morning to fly to Chicago, back to Oklahoma City, and then they're going to drive back up to Fargo. And we get there, and we're like, you know what? Let's go back to Nashville. We had a great time in Nashville. And we go there. We've got like steaks at Kid Rock's place, like some of the best steak I've ever had. And I'm in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a steak state. Like you come to Oklahoma, you get steak, you get barbecue. Like there's no other options. That's what you get when you come to Oklahoma. Like this steak was delicious. Kid Rock wasn't there, but it didn't matter. Had a great time there. And we ended up at Tootsie's, and Tootsie's is like the place to end up. We got up on the top floor all the way up to the stage. And if you don't know this, Nashville is the bachelorette party capital of the U.S. Bachelor party Vegas, bachelorette party is Nashville. Didn't know this.
Didn't know that.
So there's groups of ladies out there going wilding out before their vows and all this stuff. And we had made it all the way up to the front of the stage. A little bit earlier, like there were some gals that were like trying to get away from this creepy guy, and the three of us, edged him and his loser buddy out of there. We kind of protected them or whatever, and got up to the front, and we were right up front, right dead center. And there was us, the two gals that we kind of helped out. And on the other side of us was this bachelorette party. And even though they made it all the way to the stage, they weren't in the center, and they were not happy about it. This gal was like elbowing my buddy in the kidneys, like trying to move in and move over. And like, there's nowhere to go. Like everyone's like sardine canned in. Like everyone's in there tight. There's probably violated fire code. if I was to guess. I don't know. But like everyone was in there pretty tight. There's nowhere to go. And like, what is she trying to gain? But she's like railing on my buddy. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? Like, there's nowhere to go. She like grabs my hand, and I'm like grabs my hand, like digs the closet, and I'm like, what the heck? And the girls that we helped out earlier, like they saw what was going on, and my buddy's just got his hands up, and we were, he was in the Navy, I'm in the Navy. Like, we're not gonna fight back,
Right?
Like, it's just a terrible situation. But the gals that we helped out earlier, they went and alerted the security guards and like kicked out that bachelorette party that was being a pain. So like it worked out. It was great for us. And then we kind of, spoiled the mood. So we went down a floor, and I'm talking to whoever's at the bar there, and someone's like, dude, your hand, there's blood like running down my arm from this girl. Like she like tore a chunk out of my hand on my birthday before I'm going overseas here for like I was like, oh my God, like what the heck? So like that was the end of that night. You've ever been to Nashville?
Yes.
Have you had the Nashville hot chicken?
Yes.
For those of you that haven't had it, there's like a company like Hattie B's that's kind of like franchised out. Like it's not bad, but it's not like Nashville hot chicken. Nashville hot chicken is delicious. If you get a chance to check that out, definitely do that.
Yeah. So there's a wing place here in my community that has a they call it the Music City chicken.
Yeah.
I guess not to infringe upon maybe some coin phrase, or I don't know, but it's the same thing. And
it's a motto or something. The city motto.
It could, yeah. But it's amazing. The flavor, because it's honey and like your hot sauce and some peppers, and I mean it's
like the spices are like baked into the skin. It's not a sauce. But like I've been to Anchor Bar in Buffalo where like the original buffalo wings were made. Like it's not like that. No. It's like baked into the skin. It's just really like the heat's hot, and it like stays with you.
Yes.
Like it's there. Like it's penetrating your being. You are, yeah. But we wake up the next day, and we still haven't made it to Chicago yet. So we're like, well, where are we gonna go? We go to St. Louis for the night. And the Sharks were in town playing the Blues. We got to see that. We had those little lime scooters. This was a couple years ago, so they weren't big everywhere yet. We were scooting around. We had some axe throwing. And the next day, we went up in the Arch. Have you ever been up in the Arch?
No.
So there's like these circular elevators that go up and go around the Arch like this. There's like 4 of them in a thing. And we get up there, and you can like see like forever. On one side, you can like see the river and all the stuff that they're doing there, all the commerce that's going on. On the other side, you see like down this parkway to like it's not the Capitol building, but like the City Hall and beyond. And we looked down, and there was like 4 friends, like, arms up, like laying up, just looking at the Arch from the bottom. And we're like, hey, let's take a picture of these guys. So we look down, and we take a picture, and it's an amazing shot. And then we go down there, and they're still there, and we're like, hey, we want to send you something. And they're like, well, I was like, we took a picture of you from up there, and we gave it to them, because what are the chances that you would have like a picture like that? Because it would have to be like one of your buddies would have to go up and do it, and they wouldn't be in the picture. But they've got this picture from where, and like, I don't know, like they're going to listen to this episode and like track me down and thank me or something. But like they've got this picture.
It could happen
from the Arch, from them like down on the grass looking at.
That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that's
really cool.
It's just like one of those things. Like that was cool. But then we've got to go to Chicago. We've got to go. I want to go there. I want to get like deep dish from the place. And there's been some argument. We chose Geno's East, and apparently that's not the place. Well, here's the deal. I don't care. I went to Geno's East. It was great. Had a great time. Don't care. Finished up our little trip, and then we woke up in the morning. I went to the airport, and then they drove back to Fargo. So we just had an absolute.
That sounded like a blast.
Yes, yeah. An epic road trip of all time. And people are like, you road tripped in the middle of the country? I'm like, yes, it was phenomenal. Had a great time. Other than
nobody got kidnapped, nobody got face tattooed, and there wasn't a stolen tiger.
We lost Doug. Mike Tyson would like to know, why is this tiger in your bathroom? Like,
well, have you seen the documentary Neat?
No,
it's based on I think it's based on Buffalo Trace, but it's a narrated documentary on bourbon. And if you're a bourbon connoisseur, have to watch. It's like 90 minutes. You can find it on Hulu. It's free, and it's just called Neat. And it'll open your mind to those people who don't know a lot about bourbon, but like the flavor of bourbon. Why?
Yeah.
So do you add a diffuser? Do you put a little drop of water in your bourbon now after going on the trail?
I do that if I have it neat with a drop of water, or I have like one of those giant ice cubes that doesn't really melt, but it gets it cold. Because I was like always like a bourbon and Coke guy, and then I tried actually good bourbon, and I was like, oh, I don't need Coke.
No.
And then you start getting things like old fashions and new fashions. New fashions is delicious. If anyone meets me anywhere and they say, hey, let's go have a new fashion, I'm in. Yes is the answer. Let's go get it done. Absolutely delicious.
Old fashioned, new fashion versus a Manhattan.
You know, I can't say that I've ever had a good Manhattan.
As in all the Manhattans you've had were bad, or you just...
I just don't like the stuff that's in it. You know what I mean?
It's bourbon and vermouth. All it's missing is the fruit.
Vermouth sucks, apparently, in my opinion. I don't know. But I was in Baltimore a couple in October, and Baltimore's got seafood and tequila bars. They're everywhere. We're in this place and walking by, and invariably you see like a couple of random bottles of stuff that are not tequila. I'm not a tequila guy. And I was like, what kind of bourbon has? Like, it's a tequila bar. I'm like, bring your manager over, or go to the bar, grab the bartender. Like, I saw bourbon bottles. Like, what do you have? I'm like, it's tequila. Stop. Don't be that way. Don't be that way. I know you've got it. Let's try to get along here. And we're at this place, and the guy comes over. He's like, well, what are you looking for? I was like, I tried all different types of bourbons. So I'm looking for something interesting, something I haven't had before, something crazy. He's like, well, we have Pappy Van Winkle. I was like, oh,
Eureka!
The holy grail of bourbon in a tequila bar on Fells Point, just off the Inner Harbor in Baltimore. I was like,
my old stomping grounds.
How are you? Huh?
My old stomping grounds, by the
way. Yeah. So he brings it out. If you haven't tried Pappy Van Winkle, it is amazing. I don't know if it's worth $3 or $4 grand. These resellers get it. He's like, you know what my price is for the restaurant? I was like, no. He's like, $70 for them to get it in the restaurant. People buy these in liquor stores and stuff, and they get the license to be resellers, and then because they just don't release very much of it, and it's in the barrels quite a long time.
Very long time.
Like, it's between $2 and like $6 grand for a bottle of bourbon, which I'm not into that kind of stuff.
No,
like
my 41st birthday, my wife took me to a speakeasy, and they had Pappy, and it was $200 a shot.
Ooh, no, this was
it was my birthday present, so I got it.
I had a double. I had a double at this bar for $65.
Shut up.
Yeah.
I'm just mad now.
Well, then I had another one, and then I went back the next night because I knew it was almost gone, and I was like, is there any left in there? And they're like, sir, we don't have that here. I'm like, go get your manager. I had something yesterday here. And he comes back out, he's holding the bottle. He's like, you want to finish this off? I was like, I do. I really do. That'd be great. He brought me some tequilas to try. I guess he's a tequila guy. He brought me 2 or 3 tequilas, and I was like, just doesn't have that sweet caramelized, corn taste that I love.
Yeah, no. Angel's Envy Rye has like a butterscotch or a toffee finish to it. Oh, it's
really?
Oh, it is very good. That's my new favorite rye.
That's your new favorite. So, I mean, Baltimore's got Sagamore Distillery, and they've got Sagamore rye, and that's the first rye that I've tried that I've liked. And then, like, I get back to Oklahoma, and I'm like, oh, it's not distributed here. We went down to South Padre Island for Christmas to see my dad, and we're driving back. I was like, let's go like the different way, like not 35. I don't want to drive through Austin again. It was horrendous. But I was like, oh, we ended up in Wichita Falls, and there's a Specs there. I was like, oh, I wonder what they have. And I saw Sagamore rye on the shelf, and I was like, ooh, put some of that in the cart. And I'm driving. I'm like, where's some other higher end stuff? Like, I don't see it. Like, they have these like locked glass cases. And my wife's like, "Oh, isn't that like the one you have?" And it's like a Sagamore rye, 8 years. Like, out goes the cheap, in comes the expensive one. Grab 2 bottles of that. I've got a friend here in town in Oklahoma City who won like one of those like bourbon raffles. Have you seen these things where you can like support a nonprofit, buy a raffle ticket? He's like, $100 or whatever. He won 8 bottles of Blanton's, which is the whole set.
Yeah. That's the entire allocated amount for the entire United States for 1 year, 8 bottles.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, you won 8 bottles in one shot for $100.
Wow.
So I'm gonna see if I can swap him a bottle of the Sagamore rye that he can't get for one of those bottles of Bland's. We'll see how that goes.
Bland's is okay. I mean, this could be an entire another show, and I know
it could be a whole. I had Blanton's up in Rhode Island in Newport, which is not a cheap place. They wanted $85 for a shot of Blanton's, which isn't that great.
No,
it wasn't bad, but I mean, it's not like, oh yeah, definitely Blanton. Like,
if you can get your hands on one, it's about $70 to $90. For that same price point, there are better flavored bourbons than Blanton's.
I've been a fan.
If you want, but
I finally tried Old Forester. You know, it's
cheap stuff.
It's like a $25 bottle of bourbon. The Old Forester 100 proof is delicious. It really is.
Find it. There's a bourbon called Benchmark. They've got a full bonded, and then they have like a 126 proof.
I'm
I'm
over here taking notes. Like, ooh, check out this documentary. Check it out, Benchmark.
$26, $26 to $28 for the 126 proof, and I would put that up against, your $70 bottles of stuff. So anyway, we're at an hour, and
I hear you like bourbon. Let's talk about bourbon for 40 minutes. Yes, please. Yeah.
Welcome to the Bourbon and Talk Show, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, Bourbon and Talk.
Tell us about the Nonprofit Architect. What is it that you're doing, and how can people find you?
So you can go to nonprofitarchitect.org. The best page on there is probably the blog page. I've created a blog post for all the episodes. In there, you can find the player. You can play it directly. You can click on the YouTube video where this gorgeous face is talking to whatever guest I have. Some of them have the full transcript. Some of them do not. That's something that we're working on. So if you want to watch it, listen, or read, you have your option. And then we've got the bio of the guest and the things that they do. But really, it is the premier how-to show for nonprofits. All the guests that come on, I do a couple solo episodes, but all the guests that come on, they're teaching something directly. When I got stationed in Bahrain and I had been doing nonprofit stuff here in the States, because I've been in Oklahoma City for so long, I ended up on the board of a couple of nonprofits. We gave like I think it's like $40,000 we've given to nonprofits now. We've donated like 1,500 hours of volunteer time, got whatever the medal is for the military that says good job volunteering. I got that thing. And then I got over to Bahrain, and I was like, the family stayed in Oklahoma City. I was like, I've got to find something to do to keep me productive. I was doing, some audiobooks and stuff. Ended up going through like more than 60 audiobooks in a year, which is a great idea. And I was like, how am I supposed to keep doing this fun nonprofit stuff? And someone's like, well, you kind of got a voice and a face for podcasting. And I was like, oh yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. They're like, have you ever considered podcasting? I was like, I really don't know a whole lot about it. And I had a friend of mine who was doing a podcast, and our co-host had been in the business like radio and podcasting for a disgusting amount of time. And, had a conversation like, what are you trying to do? Well, I'm really trying to help the nonprofit industry, as a whole, and provide value in this and that. And he's like, I really like what you're talking about, because we've been talking for like 25 minutes and you haven't mentioned your personal compensation yet. And I was like, oh, is that like a thing? He's like, most people I talk to, within the first 20 words, they say money, monetization. How can I get paid from this thing? And you can, right? There's things you can do to get paid. I have a whole guide that you have in your hand printed out that I wrote.
We alluded to this earlier. He did take my money, but he took it for this.
Yeah. The ultimate complete podcast guide from the Nonprofit Architect, still available. All the people that have purchased in the past, I've given them all the updated versions every time I get an update. I think we're on version 6. So Patrick's got like a stack of them things.
I do.
But there's a whole monetization section in there, but he's like, you haven't mentioned that stuff. So like, you're a really good candidate to do podcasting. There's like 2.5 or million or more podcasts now. Like we hit like April, I think last year we hit like 2 million podcasts. Everyone was in COVID, had nothing better to do. So everyone's like, let's start a podcast, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that, but it's still relatively blue water territory. Like there's like billion YouTube channels. There's a couple billion blogs, I want to say. I'm sure the numbers aren't right, but
I
like
mean,
there's
we're
a disgusting amount of blogs, a disgusting amount of YouTube, but not yet a lot of podcasts, although the number's high, right? Most shows on there haven't gone beyond 10 episodes. So kudos to you, Patrick, for getting over the 10 episode hump. And the thing that really sucks for most people is you're no good as a host, like your first 15 to 20 shows.
Yeah.
You're just not. You don't have experience. You're not a professional interviewer. You're not sure what your voice is, what you want your flow to be. Like you just don't know. So most people like get started and they're like, they have dollar signs in their eyes and they get to episode 8 and they're like, I suck. No one's listened to it. I'm not making money. Why would I continue? And it's really unfortunate. And if anyone's considering podcasting, like I got more questions about podcasting than I ever did about nonprofits for whatever reason. Podcast has been very successful. We hit number 4 in the US within 4 months of starting. We've been top 6 in like 6 countries. Been recognized by Podcast Magazine as the number 11 veteran hosted podcast. Just hosted the first annual Veteran Podcast Awards here, October 5th of 2021. Got my swag in the back. I like a little Warhammer, in case I want to host a podcast show or defend Asgard or whatever have you. But like, it's just been so much fun. Every single person that I interview, I get to learn something. I love learning. I love finding a new perspective. I love meeting new people. I was forced into it when I was younger in the military. You end up meeting just a ton of crazy people. And then that's just like the thing that I do. Like I drink and I know things. I drink and I meet people. Like that's what I've been doing. So having a lot of fun with that. We also do production services for people that are just, I'm interested, but I don't want to do any of the work. Hey, love people like that. Pay me. My team would be happy to do the work. It's wonderful. But like on the site, on nonprofitarchitect.org, we've got the Nonprofit Podcast Network where we've got like 15 nonprofit shows dedicated to helping you do nonprofit stuff. You like my show, maybe you like 2 or 3 other ones. And then we also have the Veteran Podcast Network that you can find Patrick's show on.
Yes.
Nonprofitarchitect.org, Veteran Podcast Network. My show's on there. Patrick's show's on there. All of our friends' shows are on there. Richard Kaufman, his show's on there and whatnot. There's just over 40 veteran hosted shows on that channel. So if you're looking for a good veteran podcast, the Air Force Podcast of the Year, the Navy Podcast of the Year, the Marine Corps Podcast of the Year are all on that channel. You're going to find great conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to Sergeant G and the Stoned.
Yeah. Sergeant G and the Stoned Vet. I just texted him today saying I'm going on your show. He's like, say what up for me. Yeah. The Stone Vet USMC Marine Corps Podcast of the Year, that's on that channel. Battle Buddy Podcast, the Air Force Podcast of the Year, hosted by Keith McKeever, is also on that channel. Shout out to them. And then Michael Hinkle, co-hosted with Serena Billings. They do diapers and deployments and try to see who had it worse, the guy deploying or the person that was stuck back home. They won the Navy Podcast of the Year, the Business Podcast of the Year, and the overall Veteran Podcast of the Year. Wow. And that's actually who I'm interning for, because the company that runs that is Skill Mill. So I'm interning for them, helping them with their show. Yeah, I beat the Navy. # beat the Navy.
That's going into these show notes right here. #
into the show notes. Yeah, but I've got a tab on there. I really feel that more businesses need to do this. Every show that I've been a guest on, there's like a whole guest appearance tab, so that they have permanent space on my website, showing their stuff. So like when this goes live, there'll be a separate link of all the guest appearances I've done. And then I've got stuff for sale, like the Ultimate and Complete Podcast Guide, which was released this time last year. Version 1 wasn't that great. It was like 33 pages, had some stuff in it. It was better than a lot I heard. And immediately when it came out, people were like, hey, where's the guide? This is the guide. Where's the course? And like, happy to announce, like right before I got on the show, I'm talking to the course developer, and the course we've created to pair along with this thing is in the review process at Forbes Business School. Wow. What does that mean? That means when you take the course, you actually get legit college credits from Forbes. I think their parent university is the University of Arizona, but regionally accredited, only professional podcaster to have a no kidding course available in college. You get college credits, you get university level credits for taking a podcasting course. I mean, like,
That's pretty awesome.
that's just crazy talk.
Yeah, it is crazy talk.
Yeah.
Well, I know you got a jet because you're lined up for another one right after this. You have a
back to back to back to back to back.
Yeah. Anything you want to leave us with before signing off?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have something that happened to you in the military in your life that you haven't got off your chest, talk about it. Everyone has been through something, maybe not the same thing, but as soon as you start talking about it, it has less control over your life. That's definitely number one. Number two is if you've considered starting a podcast and you're not sure where to start, I got a free downloadable, like 15 reasons I think everyone needs a podcast. Check that out. Use the discount code free99. If you mess it up, you're out $1. If you forget about the code, I don't need the buck, but if you want to give me a buck, I'll take the buck. But no kidding. If you've got a phone, you can download the Anchor app for free. There's a couple other free apps and get started. Start talking into your phone. I would rather have you fall in love with podcasting than just jump off and, pay me money and wonder why it's not working out for you. Fall in love with podcasting. It is a great time. I love it. I know that Patrick loves it.
Yes.
And please check out the show. Check out nonprofitarchitect.org. It's got all the links, got all my social connections. Connect with me on social. Ask me questions. Please ask me questions. Or hop over to the Veteran Podcast Network. Check out my show. Check out Patrick's show. And check out another 40 veteran hosted shows hosted by great people like Sergeant G, Juan Garcia, and all of our friends.
Richard Kaufman and the rest of them.
Yeah, Richard Kaufman's on there. I don't think I have JD's on there. I don't know if he's still doing Tales from the Barstool. I know he was one of your guests.
Yeah,
I got to get that on there. I know he's doing just YouTube, so I don't know if he's got an RSS feed.
No, he does. Last I heard.
Oh,
yeah,
perfect. Then I got to get JD's show on there. Shout out to JD Tierney who made my hat. Where's my hat? This great hat, Southpaw Laser Concepts. Hello, yes. JD. Congratulations. Good work. Always high quality. Yeah, check us out. Find us out. Ask questions. Please ask questions. If you're listening to the podcast and you're not contacting the guests and asking questions or contacting the host, you're doing it wrong. We love it.
Yes,
when you ask us questions and reach out. Please do.
All right. Well, folks, here we go. This has been episode number 17 of the Knock&Talk show with our guest, Travis, the man Johnson. I've had a blast, and I think we should come back, circle back around, and do a bourbon talk, like a live tasting.
Tastes like bourbon.
Yeah. So this Old Fourth Distillery here in Atlanta. I'm going to send you one of these.
Oh, all right.
It's locally distilled here in Atlanta. They are not a sponsor. Could be if they want to be. But I'm going to send you a bottle of that so that perhaps we can do a tasting live and get your thoughts on an Atlanta bourbon. So
sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Y'all be good, be well, and we'll catch you next time.